Hey, this is John. Welcome back to Modern Old School Developer. So in this episode, I want to keep working on refactoring our state into Redux. I've got these two select boxes being controlled by Redux. I want this one to be as well. So let's go back into VS Code, and it's no longer the actor selector anymore. It's just our select boxes. So let's rename this. Let's call it the select box slice. All right, we've got that. And VS Code should help us rename some things, so that will help out. All right, actor selector slice type makes no sense anymore, so let's call it the select box slice type. All right, we'll go do that. Then we'll go into our store. Let's see here. I want to change this to select box slice. All right, so that should be good. In our state, we'll change this type. It should just be select box slice type. All right, that should fix that. So what else do we have in here? I see in actor selector, we've got some problems. If we hit save, yep, that should fix that. All right, so all of that is fixed now. So now we can update the state we're controlling in here. So I want to add the movie ID from our formic state into this state. So let's say movie ID is an empty string. We need to change the type that's going to be in our state. So let's say movie ID is a string. All right, that fixes that. So now we've got that. Let's make a new action. It's going to be set movie ID. It's a function which takes our state and an action, which is a payload action of type string. And it's an arrow function which does state.movieID equals action.payload. And put the comma in. And let's not forget to export that. Okay, so I think that should be everything we need to do to add this to our state. So let's go replace it in our stuff. So first we'll go into our main page, because that's where our current state is. So up here somewhere, here's movie ID. All right, we're going to delete that. We need to go fix that type. So over in form, we won't have this anymore. All right, that should take care of that. All right, it's going to have a lot of places where it's looking for movie ID. But let's go fix the movie list first, and then we'll come back to the rest of them. So movie list is where we're actually, well, one of the primary places we're using movie ID. So let's go look in here. Well, we don't need this from formic anymore, so we can get rid of that. And let's go down to where the select box is. So it's over here. Here's movie ID. We don't need that. We don't need this onChange handler anymore. We need a different onChange handler. So we need to import a few things from our actor selector. We need to import these things into movie list. So we'll go up here and add those. All right. We don't need this, though. We only need one value in here, just the movie ID. So we can just say it is state, and it shouldn't be actor selector anymore. Did I not fix that? Let's see here. I've got this being actor selector. That should be select box. And then inside our store, that should be select box. All right, so in actor selector, that means this needs to change to select box. All right, that should be okay. And now if we import this, and if we import this, we can go do selectbox.movieID. And that's how I select a single value from our state. All right, that looks pretty good. Oh, extra H in there. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now we can go back to our select and make our form handler. So let's get rid of this. And we have our event, and it's going to simply do Redux dispatch set movie ID and e.target.value. All right, there we go. There is our change handler taken care of. So I don't think there's anything else we need to do on this. This just needs to update our value whenever we select a new movie ID. So that should be okay. All right, so what else do we have to do then? Let's go up here We don't need our handle change anymore from format. We can get rid of that. All right, so here is our movie ID. Where is that coming from? It's coming from here, so that's fine. So where else might it be looking for this? All right, I see it's converting it to a number. That doesn't really need to be a thing. Let's just make it movie ID there. And is there anything else going on here? I don't see any problems in this anymore, so I think this one is okay now. This one should be fine. So let's go fix the rest of these problems. So in main page, we're looking for the values movie ID from Formic. We don't have that anymore, so we're going to need to get the value of movie ID from our Redux state. And to do that, I think we're going to need to move this function inside our JSX so we can use a hook. So let's make this a function which has a return. All right. And then we'll put this in here. All right. So that takes care of having this function in here. Now I can grab that movie ID value and use that. So let's copy this from movie list and go back into main page. And we'll get this value right here. We'll have to import the app selector. All right. And now we can replace values movie ID with simply movie ID. Okay, and that should be all good for main page. All right, let's close that and move on to actor selector. Again, trying to use that movie ID from Formic. We don't want to use that anymore. So let's go ahead and see. We can get movie ID right in here with the rest of our app selector. So we'll do that, and we'll delete this right here and right here. All right, that fixes that. So I think actor selector is okay now. Category selector, same thing over here. So let's get the movie ID, and we'll put that over here. And let's import the app selector. And now we just get rid of Formic values. Oopsie. And now we have movie ID. Perfect. That looks good for category selector. Movie data form. All right, we need that one as well. All right, I've pasted that movie ID in here, imported our use app selector hook, and all we need to do is highlight these two things and delete them. And I think, hey, there we go. No more issues. That looks like it ought to be good. There's one more problem here. VS Code has this weird issue. Wherever you rename a file, it thinks the old file needs to be there. So we can restart the Typescript server, and that will make that go away as well. Okay, so now I think everything should be good. Let's go see if it is. All right, let's refresh this. We'll go out to our state and our Redux tools, and you can see we've got our new state here. We've got our movie ID. Movie ID is set to be blank. That's not correct. We must not have changed that. That should be the selection that's right here. And you can see when I highlight it, it doesn't select it either. So it does when I change it, but it's not selected by default. So let's go fix that real quick. So let's go back into the movie list component, into our use effect. I'm setting the field name here. That's not correct. We need to use our Redux dispatch to set that over here instead. So let's say, what was that? Redux dispatch set movie ID. It should be data0.id and need it to be a string, so we'll convert it there. Okay, now I think maybe that should work. There is a dependency problem, so let's add Redux dispatch over here to solve that. Okay, now it should be okay. Let's try that again. So let's hit refresh. I go to state. Movie ID is now 1. Okay, so it looks like it's highlighted, and it is correct. We've got the data. Can I remove Chadwick Boseman from Karate Kid, who shouldn't be on there anyway? Yes, I can. Okay, that looks good. Yep, it looks like everything is okay. So what if we change selections here? I've got a new movie ID. I've got a new selected ID. I've got a new available ID. Yeah. Carrie Fisher. Yep, she's added to Black Panther. And she's removed. All right. I think that has worked. All right. So that has added all of our, or that has refactored all of our formic state that I want to put into Redux. Now, I'm kind of leaning towards these problems with the value and the movie list and the multi-select boxes as being a Firefox issue, not a formic issue. But I don't know how to solve them, so we're just going to ignore that for now and handle them like this. So there's no place where we need to set the value with Redux and then change the value of the forms. So it's okay that we aren't controlling the value of these select boxes with the state. All right, next I want to start adding ReduxToolkit query. I told you that Redux could manage async state. So how is that going to help us? Well, for one thing, it's going to cache our database queries. So when I flip back and forth, we won't be loading this every single time. It will fetch it in the background when it's needed. Also, it'll be able to automatically reload things based on what we're doing. Now, we could have done that with synchronous state, but it's much harder to handle properly, and that's why async state management was created to work around some of the problems you encounter when fetching things from a remote source like a backend database. So let's go back into VS Code and let's make a new file in our state folder. I'm going to call it the movie manager API.typescript. This is going to be our entire API for interfacing with the backend from the front end. So to start with, we're going to import a couple things. We're going to import create API and fetch base query. That's going to come from at ReduxJS Toolkit query React. Okay, so this is going to make a reducer, very similar to how we made the other reducers, but it's tailored for handling API calls. So let's see what we're going to do with that. Well, first I'm going to say export const API equals create API, and again, it takes an object. We need a reducer path. I don't really know what this does, but I know it needs to be unique. So we're just going to call it movie manager API. All right, I'm going to add some tag types, and we'll see what those are later. But for now, I'm just going to add movies, and we'll see what happens with that in a little while. All right, let's see. That should be tag types. I didn't mean tags types. And now I want the base query, and this is going to be part of the fetch base query. This is how we're going to be doing the fetching. So ReactToolkit query has written a wrapper around the fetch API, so we don't have to interact with things if we have very basic REST API things. There are ways you can make your own custom queries or use Axios or whatever you want to do, but since we only use fetch anyway, we'll just use their fetch base query API with ReduxToolkit. So again, I want an object in here, and all we need to supply it is a base URL. That's going to be the process.env.react_app_backend. All right, so now we've got our base query. So the last thing we need to do is make our endpoints. So endpoints is going to be a function. This function takes a builder object, and the builder object builds our queries for us. So what we need to do is actually supply an object for all the endpoints we want to get. So I want to have one that is for movies. This is going to be our movies endpoint that fetches all the movies. And we're going to say builder.query, and it's going to give me, or the parameters are going to be what I expect it to return. So it's going to be a movie file type, I think. It's going to be an array of those. And it takes no arguments, so we don't need anything there. And now we're going to have a function that takes, we're calling this function with an object. So the object is going to be the query, and the query is a function. These are the function parameters. There are none. And then we have our endpoints, which is /movies. And then we give it our provides tags. This is going to help us with caching and refreshing data later on. And our provides tags for this one is just movies. So when we use this query, it's going to provide the movies. That's our tag. So whenever we need to refetch our movies, we will invalidate this tag. and then it will fetch things for us in the background automatically, which is a very nice feature. All right, so there is our API. So let's go add it to our store. So we're going to put it inside our reducer, just like our select box, and we're going to put it in, I'm looking for here, I think it's going to be movie manager API dot reducer path, and that's going to be movie manager API dot reducer, I think. Let's see how that works. Need to go back here to API for a minute. I forgot to export some things. So one of the things that we have the React here for is that it's going to give us lots of hooks we can use to work with these queries. So we can do export const, and we can say use movies query equals API. And is that right? Yeah, I think that is right. Okay, so we've got a use movie query there, and that should be good. Yeah, that should be good for this. So let's import our API. So I think this actually is going to be API and API, and then we'll import that from Movie Manager API. Okay, that's where I was going. I thought it was a default export, but it's not. It's a regular export. So, okay, we have our API, we have our reducer. So how do we actually use that to replace our movie list use effect hook? Well, let's go over here and see how that works. So back in our movie list, we've got this right here, which is handling our list of movies. It's a use effect hook, and that's what we've been doing so far to fetch our data. But we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to have this use effect hook at all. So we'll just go ahead and comment that out. All right, what else do we need to do? Well, we need to actually get the movie some other way. So let's first do a const something equals use movies query. Okay, so what is the XX? Actually, it's got a lot of stuff on there that we can make use of. It has data, it has is loading, it has is error, it has the error message, and it has is success. I think there are other things on there too, but we won't worry about those for now. So I'm going to rename my data to just be movies. All right, so what is this going to do? Well, it's going to actually run that query in the background. It will wait until it's loaded, and then it will set is loading to false for us automatically, and then we will have our data in movies. And we'll know if there's an error by the is error and error properties. We'll know if it was successful from is success. So we don't need this use state anymore either. That's handled for us as well. All right, so let's go see what else we need to do to fill out our movie list. Let's go down here, and somewhere in here is probably, yep, here's loading. So we can change that to is loading. So if we're loading, we'll display our loading thing, and if we're not, we're going to display our movies. So right here we're using state.movies.map. We don't want to do that anymore. Instead, we're going to say just movies.whatever. So we will say it's going to be movies.map, and I believe that should be everything. Okay, object is possibly undefined. It's going to be a movie file type, or it's going to be undefined. So we might want to just say question mark there, and that should fix that. Now, we know that it won't be undefined there because we're not loading anymore. I guess if we got an error, it would be, but it shouldn't be. So let's go see if that actually works. Let's go back into our application, and let's refresh this. Hey, our movies are still here. We've got some queries. So Movie Manager API, we've got our queries, we've got movies, we've got data. Hey, here's all our movies. The 0th element has ID 1, it's Columbia Pictures, and we have that. We don't have our default selection though, so that's kind of a problem, but we'll take care of that. But you can see we do select things and everything appears to be working out. If I go back and go forward, hey, it didn't refresh. That was probably too fast to notice, but we did not refresh this cache. It won't do that for at least 5 minutes after we've unloaded this component. That's the default timeout. So it's really handy that we don't have to have that cached, or we don't have to reload that every single time. Let's see if we can fix the select on load thing. Well, maybe we'll just replace our useEffect hook. Let's say useEffect, and we'll get a function. And why don't we say that it depends on the value of isSuccess. So in here, we'll say if isSuccess, then we'll go ahead and set this. So we'll say this right here, but not data.length. We'll say movies.length, and it's probably going to say that it might be empty, so we can say that. Let's see here. I think we probably can't do that. So we'll probably have to say if isSuccess and movies, then we'll say if movies length 0, then we'll do this. So we'll say movies 0, and I think that should work. So let's go ahead and save that. All right, let's go back into here. Let's go ahead and hit refresh. And hey, we have selected The Karate Kid as our default movie. And let's make sure we actually did that. I'll go ahead and hit refresh one more time and go to our state. Our select box, our movie ID is 1. So if I went to add Anna Paquin, yes, I've added Anna Paquin to the movie. So we do have our selection there. So our default selection is still working now with our new useEffect hook. All right, well, that was a brief introduction to ReduxToolkit query. I hope that it has been enlightening. Oh, there's a warning here. There's a warning here. There's a warning here. Hang on, I want to fix that real quick. I forgot to do this. Yeah, let's go fix that real quick. Let's go back to the store. I forgot to add one thing over here. We need to add middleware to do something on the back end. I don't know what it does, but it does important things. So we don't want to leave it out. And it's very easy to do. So in addition to our reducer, I need to say middleware, and then we're going to do get default middleware. This is a function, and we're going to do get default middleware, and we're going to concat that with API.middleware. And this handles some of the behind-the-scene actions. I don't know exactly what it does, but it's important. So let's see here. If we go over there, it was saying middleware for RTK query has not been added to the store. Features like automatic cache collection, automatic refetching will not be available. So some of the useful features will not work if we don't append the API middleware to our default middleware. So you want to make sure you do that as well. Okay. Well, I hope that this has been enlightening or useful or fun in some way. If it has, hey, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, help the channel out, and I will see you in the next episode where we will do more things with ReduxToolkit query. Thanks for watching. See you then.